Okay, so, drawing a blank. Okay, so I wanted to make this video just, not just because, like, this week is National Eating Disorder Awareness Week, but, because I think it's kind of a little overdue, and, that I share sort of my story that has to relate to, this. So just to kind of dive right in, real quick, like, this is something that's like really personal to me, and it's something that only really close people in my life know about. And if there's any family members watching this who don't know, this will be their first time finding out, and I apologize. This has just been something that I've been dealing with for a really long time, and you know, something that I really only trust like my parents and my sister with. So just to kind of like dive right in, when I was in middle school, even like dating back to even elementary school, I feel like I was bullied pretty bad. Maybe other people didn't see it that way, but like I feel like, you know, I was constantly being picked on, and you know, some of it had to do with because I was a lot bigger than the other kids. Like I was always taller and weighed more, and so, you know, that always kind of bothered me. And I think that sort of kind of started this whole thing with me like not being confident with myself and like having this problem with my self-image. And then it kind of more so like started, I remember when we moved to North Carolina, and like we went to the middle school, and I remember the first day seeing like everybody, like, I mean, you know, everybody was carrying their purses, and like this is 8th grade. I'm like, wow, this is crazy. Like, I mean, I don't look anything like these people. I'm not skinny like that. I'm not, you know, so definitely I think that like kind of added on to me having these problems with like self-image and feeling like I didn't fit in. So I won't get into too much detail because I don't want like identities to be compromised or whatnot, because this is like other people's personal lives. But basically, you know, I had been kind of told about somebody's personal, like, I guess like how they had dealt with like having an eating disorder, and I had never even thought of like even like considering having an eating disorder. Okay, like what came to mind like after, I think it was more so getting into high school, where I was like, okay, like you know, I want to lose weight. I can't, you know, I don't want to look like, I mean, I weighed almost 200 pounds, and I like, you know, and like right then, like I was, you know, I was already struggling with how much I weighed, because like, why is, you know, I think I thought to myself, like, why does everybody else look different? And I'm, you know, I weigh so much, and like, I didn't really feel like I fit in and all that. And, you know, just stuff that middle school age kids worry about. And then going into high school, there's a lot of pressure to look a certain way. And so after like I had heard about, you know, this person and like dealing with their eating disorder, you know, I kept thinking, oh, like I would never let that happen to me. Like, you know, if anything, like I'm just gonna diet and you know, try to go about it like in a healthy way. And it didn't happen that way. You know, I tried to lose weight and tried to eat healthy, and I can remember like feeling like this isn't working. Like, what do I do? Like, and this is right before I went into, or like I guess right around the time I was going into high school. And you know, I can remember feeling like, well, you know, like if they did it, why can't I? You know, like it was one of those things where like I didn't really want to have an eating disorder, but at the same time I really didn't know what else to do to lose weight, and I felt really helpless, and I didn't want to go to my parents about like trying to do anything, and I wasn't confident in myself. And so it kind of started around my, I think like somewhere during my freshman year of high school. It might have been like I want to say in like October of my freshman year of high school is when I kind of like started this eating disorder that I had. And basically I was, sorry, got an email. So basically what happened was one day it just kind of, I was like, you know, maybe like I'll just skip out on breakfast, or maybe I'll just skip out on lunch. And like I was already sort of skipping out on breakfast because I was never really big into eating breakfast. And then it just kind of was like, okay, like I'm already skipping out on breakfast, well, you know, like I'll just skip out on lunch, I'll just wait and eat something when I get home. And then as time progressed, it started to become like, well, it was sort of like this mind game, I guess. And it was, well, you know, how do I describe this in the best way? Because it's really hard to describe, and I don't want to like give any ideas to anybody, because I really would not want this to happen to anybody. It's like, but basically my whole thought process with everything was like, you know, okay, like I skipped out on breakfast and I skipped out on lunch, so like what's another meal, you know what I'm saying? So I continued to, like, I basically got to the point where I was like maybe eating every other day or every other 2 days, and when I would eat, it would be a few bites and then I would feel sick, because I started training my body to not, you know, to not eat. Like basically, like I wasn't eating anything, I was literally drinking water all the time, and like I would like go to lunch and just sit there while my friends were eating, and like I just wouldn't eat, and I would tell my parents, oh yeah, like I'm not that hungry. And like for the longest time, like my parents had no idea, because obviously like nobody wants to just come right out and be like, oh yeah, I have a problem, like I have an eating disorder. Like that's not somebody's first thoughts. Like, so like obviously my parents had no idea for quite a while. I think it went on for like 6 months, and it kind of started to get bad at the point where like one of my teachers noticed that there was something wrong. They like came up to me, they're like, are you okay? Like you've lost a lot of weight recently, like you look like you're like not doing so good. And I was like, yeah, I'm fine. You know, I've just been trying to eat healthier. I wasn't trying to eat healthier, I was just trying to lose weight, and it wasn't in a very healthy way. And at the time I didn't realize like how it would affect my body in other ways. Like for females, I won't get into it just because I'm sure there's gonna be men that are gonna watch this, but like it just kind of affects your like cycle and everything, and I didn't realize that was gonna happen. So I wasn't really thinking about the consequences like health-wise that like I was putting my body through. I was only really thinking, okay, like I'm losing the weight that I want to lose, this is good. And then my parents kind of noticed that something was going on. I guess it might have been around March, because I kind of hid it for a while. It was like 6 months, or March or February. And I remember going out to lunch and getting like a cheeseburger and french fries and eating that, except I had like 3 bites of the sandwich and a few fries. And then I went to the bathroom and I was like, felt really nauseous, and I came back and my dad was like asking me if I was throwing up my food, and yeah, they were just kind of upset with me because they had no idea that anything was going on. And I understand that, you know, now the kind of position I guess I put them in, like, you know, you would never want to hear that anybody that you love is going through something like that. And I think, you know, that I had held on to that for so long, it made them upset. And so after that I kind of started to, you know, try to get into like healthier eating, or just trying to eat better, and eat more, because now that my parents knew, obviously I'm not going to continue this like this whole eating disorder. I think because I felt more accountable now that they had noticed. Sorry, my thoughts are kind of all over the place because it's really like, it feels like such a long time ago, so I'm just trying to remember everything. So that kind of like, I didn't really have anything happen for a while. I think that was like the first sort of instance of where like I had really had like, I really had started to have a problem. And then that kind of, I just kind of like, I was able to maintain the weight that I had, like where I had lost to, I was able to maintain the weight, and I guess I felt fine. Like I was just like, started working out and started trying to eat healthy, and then I would just kind of eat whatever I wanted, and I would still like not gain the weight, so I felt fine because I wasn't gaining the weight, right? And then, so like fast forward like into my freshman year of college, and I can remember like my first semester, I think I gained like 10 pounds. And I'm like, I can remember coming home. I remember like before I went home, and I had taken a picture, and it was like a side view picture of myself, and I remember like thinking, wow, like I was not happy with how I looked because I wasn't eating right, definitely wasn't making the smartest decisions, and I just was not happy with how I looked. And so I remember like going home, and I think like in the back of my mind it was always kind of like the thought of, okay, like you know, like I did have the eating disorder, so I do know how to like do that again. I think it was just always in the back of my mind thinking, okay, like if I had to, I would, but like it necessarily wasn't something that I wanted to do, but it was just kind of there, like, so it's really hard to explain. But anywho, like I went home for Christmas break. This was December in 2016, so like 3 years ago, yeah, no, 2 years ago, yeah, so 2 years ago I went home, and I remember like I was eating fine when I was at home, and then like 2 weeks before I was leaving to go back to school, I actually started like, I think at like, well, I mean, it was a mix of things, but at first it was something that I like really couldn't control. Like I would start to feel almost nauseous after eating, like I couldn't hold any food down, and I would feel like, okay, the only way to relieve myself is if I get sick. And so that kind of started happening, and when I got back to school, I waited about a week to see if maybe it would go away, and then it hadn't gone away. And I had mentioned to my parents, I was like, you know, maybe I should go see a doctor, and they're like, well, you know, yeah, you probably should, because, you know, what if there's something wrong with you? But then in the back of my mind, I was kind of like, well, you know, I am losing weight at the same time, so like, you know, I think it was sort of like this afterthought of like, okay, like, yeah, maybe there's something wrong with me, but at the same time, like, there was times where I would make myself get sick just because I didn't, you know, so it's hard to say. It's not anything to laugh about. It's just, it's like, it's hard to try to remember, because I feel like it's been a while, and like at the same time I feel like I've grown so much that it's hard to remember, you know, that time in my life of like how that was, because I spent a lot of time going back and forth to doctors that year to see what was wrong. And then I had been diagnosed with atypical bulimia, and I had some other things wrong with like my like I had to go see a gastroenterologist, so I was taking like different medicines, and I had taken like muscle relaxers, because I had like just a whole bunch of stuff happened to me my freshman year that like I got hurt a lot, and then yeah, and then I had like my second semester when I got back, I was diagnosed with atypical bulimia, and with like some other things wrong with my like intestines and whatnot. So I did go to a doctor, but what they told me was when I went to see them that they wanted to do tests, but they were only going to do them if they needed to be done, like if my continuously getting sick, because I was getting sick like like 5, 6, 7 times a day. Literally, like after every time I would eat something, I was literally like throwing it back up. Like it was that bad. And so he was like, well, if it continues, then we'll go in and actually see if there's actually something wrong. And then it like stopped. So I think that's when I kind of realized that it was like mentally I was doing it to myself, but I was also kind of trying to avoid the fact that there was this this thing wrong. Like there was something, like I did have this eating disorder. I think I was trying to avoid having anybody tell me that I had an eating disorder. So like so it was easier for me to just say, oh yeah, like I think they have like a stomach problem, where I could like kind of hide it, you know what I'm saying? I don't know if that's the best way to explain it, but like after he told me, you're gonna have to go like in another month, we'll see how things are, we'll check back in. And like after that, I just kind of stopped getting sick. And he was like, if it persists at like 5, 6 times a day, then we'll have to go. But it started just going back down to like 1 or 2 times a day. So I think at that point it was kind of like I started to realize like it was something that I was doing to myself, but I didn't fully want to accept that I was making myself sick. And then at that same time, around that same time, is when I had relapsed back into my eating disorder with like making myself not eat. And I think there was at one point I went like almost 4 days, I think, without eating. And in that period of time, I literally I couldn't get out of bed. I was so weak. And a lot of this too had stemmed from like being depressed and dealing with school, because there was a lot that I was involved in that there was a lot of pressure on me, I felt like. And so I feel like that in turn kind of affected how I dealt with myself internally and externally. So okay, sorry, the video cut out. But anyways, what I was saying was that so I was dealing with having this like bulimia, along with also not making myself eat. So I was like having all of these issues, and and some of it had to do with school, and then it had to do with how I looked at myself, because I didn't like the way that I looked. I thought I had gained too much weight, and I ended up losing like a drastic amount of weight in a matter of like a week. It was really, really bad. Like what I weigh now, like I weigh I'll just go ahead and say it, like I weigh 147, 145, and that's how much I weighed when I had lost the weight when I was a freshman in high school. So or maybe not that much, I think that might be too much. But okay, actually I take that back. I'm somewhere around there, but I did like when I lost the weight, I think the second time, like when I got really, really sick 2 years ago, that's what I was just talking about. That's when, okay, so I was like close, I think I was like 150 something from like when I had gained all the weight, and then when I lost it and like got really, really sick and was like, not eating for like 4 days, that's when I had come down to the weight that I'm at now, which now this is like a healthy weight for me, because I'm continuously working out. So like, and I eat basically whatever I want. Like I don't have this problem of like feeling like I don't need to eat or whatever. And I'll get to that after, but basically like I had lost the weight and weighed what I weigh now. And then over time, it just started to get worse and worse. Like I just couldn't really eat. I didn't want to eat. I was really sick and really depressed and upset. And so I was constantly losing weight. And I think the lowest I weighed like over the summer was like 135, 131. It was probably the lowest, like the smallest I've ever weighed. and I was very, very, very sick, like to the point where you could see like my ribs, and like it's probably the worst that I've ever had any sort of eating disorder problems. And so it took me a while to kind of real quick, I'm just gonna tell you this. Over the summer, that summer, when I had weighed like that, like however much I weighed, like 131, 135, around there, my dad even tried to get me to go to the gym, and I tried to work out and literally was in bed like after that for 3 days straight because my whole body was sore. I couldn't move and I couldn't work out. I didn't literally couldn't lift anything. I was so weak, like I've never felt like that. And my parents at this point did kind of know everything that was going on. I did tell them, but it was really hard for me to try to eat and everything because I was really not in the best state of mind. And I know my parents were really concerned for me. And at one point over the summer, I did have to go, I made the decision to go see a doctor, only because I felt that if I didn't, then I didn't know what was going to happen to me, because I really was in a bad state that I didn't know, I didn't want to, the thing is that, I really was in a bad place, but I didn't want to, go to the extremes of, doing something drastic. But I felt like if I kept on the path that I was, then then that would happen, and I didn't want that to happen. I physically wanted to get better. I hated being literally bedridden all summer. I hated, not being able to get out of bed because I was so weak, and I couldn't eat, and I was, and I hated that. And so I did go see a doctor, and just kind of said that, I wanted to go speak to somebody professional because I felt like I needed to just kind of talk about things. And I felt like, I love my parents and I'll tell them anything, but I think sometimes, it's hard to have your parents relate to the situation when they don't know the severity of it. So I really needed to talk to somebody professional to kind of tell them everything that I was dealing with internally, with the eating disorders, and me feeling really depressed and not feeling myself, because people can tell you, oh, it's gonna be okay, things are gonna get better, but if you're dealing with it, you kind of just you don't really want to hear it. And so I knew if I had somebody, I just wanted somebody to listen to me as best as my parents had listened to me. I just really wanted somebody that was a doctor that could listen to me, that could kind of talk me through or give me, I don't know, I just felt so sorry, Mom and Dad. But yes, I did go see a doctor, and I think that sort of being able to go see the doctor helped more, because I felt she was kind of able to give me some tips, and she gave me a list of people to contact and see that I could go see. And then I think after that, once I had moved to Florida is when things I think started getting better in that area of my life, because I started trying to actually work out more and trying to eat healthier, and actually implementing good practices towards having a healthier lifestyle, instead of this bad the bad, not path, but where I was headed was not in a healthy direction for myself. So by implementing a healthier lifestyle and trying to work out, I think that really helped me kind of cope with everything, the depression, and helped me gain more weight, because and I will be honest, gaining weight has never been something that I I honestly hate the thought of even gaining weight, because I have had to deal with so much of like I've dealt with this having eating disorders for so long that like when I think about gaining weight, it kind of bothers me almost. But as I've kind of like begun to like, you know, I've been in a really good regimen of trying to work out more, and you know, just I don't think that it bothers me as much now like it did before. Like now, like if I'm gaining weight, I know I'm gaining muscle because I'm going to the gym. But I think I was also like always so worried about like my outward appearance, like how I would look towards people, like if I gained weight, and like, and like that's something I like struggle with because I also do have like body dysmorphic disorder. So like the way I see myself, and a lot of people have it actually, the way I see myself in the mirror is completely different from the way people view me from the outside. So when I look at myself, I think that I really like don't like the way I look like in the mirror at all. Like I can be completely honest, like I don't like looking in the mirror because I notice every single flaw that I have, and I'll be able to point it out, and that's like the one thing that I've always had like struggled with. And like the way that I see myself is completely different than the way that my sister sees how I look, or people that see me and how I look. Like if my sister's like, Claire, my sister could be like, Claire, you're so skinny, but I'll look in the mirror and be like, I have no idea what you're talking about because I literally look like I just gained like 5 pounds. And that's how it's always been. I think that's what has like, that's kind of what has, I don't know if this is the right way to say this, I think it's like what's hindered me from being confident with myself, I guess. Just, it's like, I think that has always kind of prevented me from really just like loving who I am as a person and how I look. But yeah, I think, you know, once I was able to get into working out and trying to implement healthier practices into my lifestyle, it's helped me a lot and like tremendously, because I've been able to you know, gain healthy weight and not gain bad weight. And I've been able to like, you know, kind of bring more positive energy into my life by realizing that like I am like, I realize, you know, my worth, and like realizing that like, you know, like I'm not this person that like I think that I look like, and that I need to be happy with the person that I am. But yeah, I know that's kind of a weird story. I just kind of wanted to put it out there because I feel like you know, a lot of people probably don't know that I've struggled with something like this, and I think it's been on my mind that I want to be able to bridge a gap for people who are struggling, that are kind of afraid to say anything, because I think it's important that if you realize that there is something going on, that you talk about it and you do go seek help, the help that you need. Because had I not talked about it with my family, or had I not gone out to see the doctor, I don't really think that I'd be in the place that I am today. And you know, I think it's really important to share this with everybody and just be completely open and honest. I'm willing to answer any questions, or if, you know, whatever. Like, I know it's kind of a weird story because it doesn't really go too much into depth, but just like that was just a basic gist of like kind of everything that happened. But yeah, I'm more than welcome to, if you want to message me or have any questions or comments or anything, you're more than welcome to leave those. But yeah, I just wanted, hopefully this kind of bridges the gap for those people who are a little, I guess, afraid to talk about the situation, because I know that I've always been afraid to talk about it, but once I did, I felt a lot better, and it kind of helped me grow into the person that I am now. So yeah, thank you guys for watching, and that is my story.